He Wild Ride of the Serpent Chapter 1. The idea born in Thunder's shadow, it all began on a rainy afternoon in Asgard. Thor sat in his hall, Hlidskjalf, polishing Mjolnir while muttering about his latest defeat. That giant Hymir tricked me again. I hooked the Midgard Serpent, but the lines snapped. I need revenge, he roared, shaking the rafters. In slithered Loki, grinning like a fox that had found a hen. His green eyes sparkled with mischief. Thor, my dear friend, why settle for fishing the serpent when you could ride him? Imagine it, you, the Lord of Thunder, galloping on Jormungandr's back like a cowboy on a wild stallion. It'd be legendary. Thor laughed so loudly that lightning struck Midgard. Ha, you're mad, Loki, but I love it. Let's do it. But how? Loki leaned in, whispering as if the walls had ears. We sneak down to the sea. I'll turn into a fish and lure him up. You jump on. Simple. The two crept out of Asgard past Heimdall, who stood guard at Bifrost. Heimdall raised an eyebrow. He saw everything, but said nothing. Those two again, he muttered, shaking his head. At the shore, Loki transformed into a shimmering salmon and swam out. Thor hid behind a rock, hammer at the ready. Soon, the water bubbled, and up rose the Midgard Serpent, Jormungandr, his enormous head like a dragon's. His scales gleamed like emeralds, and his eyes burned like glowing coals. Loki the salmon darted around the serpent, teasing him with quick twists. Come on, you lazy worm. Catch me if you can. Jormungandr, irritated at being roused from his eternal slumber encircling Midgard, opened his jaws. Loki leapt from the water, transforming back into himself and landing on the serpent's back. Now Thor charged forward, leapt, and landed with a thud on the serpent's midsection. Yeehaw, ride on, my friend, the serpent roared, shaking itself like a wet dog, and began swimming wildly. Thor and Loki laughed hysterically as waves rose high as mountains. This is better than fighting giants, Thor shouted. But in Asgard, Odin sensed a disturbance. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, flew back to him. Lord, Thor and Loki are riding the Midgard Serpent. Chaos erupts in the seas. Odin sighed deeply. Not again. Chapter 2. The wild ride and chaos in the seas. The Midgard Serpent slithered through the oceans like a drunken snake on a dance floor. Thor sat at the front, gripping a scale like a saddle horn, while Loki perched behind, shouting directions. Left, you giant serpent. No, right, dodge that whale. Jormungandr, furious at being treated like a mount, thrashed and created tsunamis that swept over Midgard's coasts. Fishermen in their boats looked up, thinking Ragnarok had arrived. Gods, save us, they cried as their boats rocked like leaves in a storm. Thor laughed so hard he clutched his stomach. Look, Loki. The serpent's trying to shake us off like fleas. Hold on. Loki, ever the quick one, transformed into a saddle to make Thor more comfortable. There, now you're a proper rider. But watch the venom, he spits like an angry cat. They rode past the 9 worlds, startling mermaids and sea gods. Poseidon or Njord, depending on the myth, peered out from his palace and shook his fist. You Asgardian gods. Leave my serpent alone. But Thor and Loki paid no heed. They competed to see who could stand on the serpent's back the longest without falling. I win, Thor bellowed, waving Mjolnir, which sent lightning bolts crashing into the water, frying fish for dinner. Finally, Jormungandr grew tired and dove into the depths. Thor and Loki held their breath. Gods don't need air, but it was thrilling nonetheless. They saw underwater cities, forgotten treasures, and an angry kraken waving its tentacles furiously. When they surfaced again, they were soaked but ecstatic. Best adventure ever, Loki exclaimed. Odin, watching from his throne, ground his teeth. They're disrupting the balance of the worlds. I must punish them again. Chapter 3. Odin's wrath and the punishment. Back in Asgard, Odin called a council. Thor and Loki trudged in, muddy and grinning like schoolboys after a mud wrestling match. Father, you should have seen it, Thor said. We rode the serpent like a pony. Odin stood, his cloak billowing like a storm. You fools, the Midgard Serpent is not a mount, he's part of the cosmos. Your antics have caused floods, sunken ships, and angry giants demanding compensation. Loki blinked innocently. But Odin, it was just a bit of fun. The serpent needed exercise. He's been lying still for eons. Odin pointed with Gungnir, his spear. Punishment. Thor, you'll clean all of Valhalla. including Freya's cats that pee everywhere. Loki, you'll be bound to a rock again, with serpents' venom dripping on you, but this time with a comedy show as background music so you can't sleep. Thor groaned. Clean, I'm a warrior, not a maid. Loki sighed dramatically. Oh, the old rock, can we at least have popcorn? The punishments were carried out. Thor scrubbed floors while Valkyries laughed at him. Loki lay bound, listening to endless jokes from a talking raven. Why did Loki cross the road? To trick the hen on the other side. But during their punishments, they huddled together and plotted their next prank. Next time we ride the Fenris wolf, Loki whispered. Odin heard it, he hears everything and sighed. They never learn, Chapter 4, lessons unlearned and new pranks. The punishments lasted weeks, but for gods, time is like rubber, it stretches. Thor finished cleaning by tossing the mop into a lake and declaring, never again, next time we tackle a bigger serpent. Loki escaped when Sigyn, his wife, emptied the venom bowl one last time. Thanks, dear. Now let's find Thor and keep the party going. They met in the forest, drinking stolen mead. Odin thinks he can stop us, Thor chuckled, but we're unstoppable. They tried smaller pranks. Loki turned Thor's hammer into a chicken, which pecked at his foot. Thor chased Loki around the trees, laughing. Come here, you serpent. Odin watched from above, his face red with anger. How many times must I punish them? They're like children who never grow up. Maybe it's time to give up. But deep down, Odin knew that without their antics, Asgard would be dull. Still, he planned one final punishment. Chapter 5. Near surrender and a final laugh, Odin summoned them again. You've tested my patience to its breaking point. One more prank, and I'll banish you to hell. Thor and Loki nodded solemnly, but behind their backs, they crossed their fingers. We promise, Father, Thor said with a grin. But the very next day, roars echoed from the seas. They had tried again, but the serpent bit back, sending them flying home. Odin sat on his throne, head in hands. I give up. Punish them. It's like punishing the wind for blowing. Let them be. Perhaps chaos is their fate. The gods laughed in secret. Thor and Loki continued their adventures, learning nothing but bringing joy and headaches to all. Epilogue. Years passed in Asgard, and Thor and Loki continued their mischief. Odin nearly gave up, but secretly he sometimes smiled at their antics. The Midgard Serpent swam on, muttering about those crazy gods. The saga teaches us. Some never learn, but humor makes life bearable. And so they lived, chaotically happy forever.